Hello, listeners. We are back for a really important conversation. I'm so glad that we're talking into this today because too many people are afraid to or are uneducated in this topic, and so probably have some fear around speaking into it. So thank you for jumping into it with us. It's going to be a super informative and really, really non-judgmental, but also a fucking crucial conversation for us to be having today, all around pornography. So my name is Showy Moon. I am one of the lovely co-hosts of the Wisdom of Womanhood podcast. And
You have me,
yeah.
Pippa. I just wanted to say, when shall we introduce the topic pornography, what did you notice in your body? What did you notice in your thoughts? Because I love language. I love words. I love how like a word can inflict different emotion and feelings in each person. So I just wonder, like, think about that just for a minute as we go into this topic. Because you may have different experiences with pornography. So just throughout this episode, as always, Shawi and I will come to this topic with grace, compassion, non-judgmental aspect, and just notice throughout the episode if it is triggering, take a break, take some breathing, and come back to it when you feel like you need to. But we always try and aim to deliver the best information through not filtered lens, but just an authentic approach as possible, as much as we can, really.
Yeah. And it's a topic that I have had at the forefront of my mind for a long time. However, it hadn't really felt like the right time to speak into it. Or when I'd thought about it, I was like, oh, we'll get an expert in to kind of dissect this. And then I went into the work that I'm in now, which is all around sexual harm prevention. So as well as my wellness business, I work with an agency called Totoko Mai here in New Zealand. They are an incredible organization, and our mission actually is to reduce sexual harm to 0%. It's a really big mission, but it's what we're doing and what we're about. And I'm part of the prevention team. And so what my role is that I go into high schools and I speak to year nines and year tens, two different curriculums that we deliver. And then I also work with teenagers and also adults who have a variety of physical or mental impairments that work within schools or agencies, and again deliver this curriculum, which is around not only sexual harm prevention, but healthy relationship building, communication skills, consent as a framework as well, whether that's sexual consent or just everyday consent in life, emotions, identifying emotions, self-care. And with our year 10 curriculum, whether or not the school opts into it, because the schools do have a choice to not include the pornography session. But we do a whole 1 hour session on pornography in itself. And when I started teaching this, and then Pippa and I had already jotted down that we wanted to talk about it in the podcast, this like desire more and more to have a whole episode on this was just like ding, 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 ding. It's so fucking necessary, particularly for us as adults. However, definitely through the lens of those of you that have teenagers, because I'm really going to be able to bring in some helpful tools and research and statistics around that for our young people, because pornography 10, 20, 30 years ago is not what it is today. And there's a misconception. I think a lot of adults now don't realize what is accessible, how accessible it is, and the degree to which, really the degree of violence to which people can be exposed to as well in it. So it's just like having a conversation around, okay, so like how can we access it? What is it? What is the potential harm? Like what are the potential benefits, and why are we looking at it? Why are we seeking it? And this is like honestly really coming from a place of like no judgment. Like I'll be completely honest, I've definitely gone through stages in my life before where I've been so into it, like really into it. And not anymore, like for me personally, and that's just got a lot to do with my work and the understanding of the psychological, emotional and physical impacts of it when it's watched a lot. And then I love giving alternatives. So I'd love to kind of finish up this episode. I'm going to drop in, and Pippa, like, love for you to jump in some really great ways that we can still receive the perceived benefits from interacting with pornography without the harmful side effects,
Yeah.
but we still get that, like, the sexy tick, tick, tick of what it is that we're
Those,
actually searching
yeah,
for.
yeah.
That would be really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna learn a lot from you as well because I've got a teenage step boy. He's 13 now, so he's moving into that kind of element as well. So it'd be good to have some tips on how to manage it and things. But I think it has changed so much. Like from when I was a teenager, I'm the same as you. I dipped in and out of it. Some things would get me off, some things wouldn't. And then now it's kind of changed because I don't really need it in my relationship because, we're connected in so many ways. But I think in my work, I've worked with a lot of women that are very triggered with partners that would, they'll catch them watching porn. I've been there before with ex-partners, I've caught them, masturbating to porn, and it would just inflict a lot of insecurities in me, like, oh, am I not good enough? Am I not sexy enough? All that kind of stuff. So it has kind of I've had work to do around pornography as well, like, and the realistic of it, the unrealistic kind of things around it and what actually is. And so I'm going to learn a lot from you. And there's things that I've learned from my clients and my own experience of pornography and how it is perceived and moving into adulthood from teenagehood, like, when our kids, my future kids, move into relationships and things, and how we got to say, real life isn't porn always, it's like different, and sometimes it actually
Most
isn't
of the time.
real. It's acting on a camera. So I mean, if I don't know about you, Shawi, but my porn go-to was all the realistic stuff, like the what's it called, amateur stuff. Like I loved all the amateur stuff because I was like, this is real life stuff instead of it being like the other element of like unrealistic, like a bit OTT over the top. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to kind of get through today, and I'm looking forward to like the tips that you're going to give as well.
Yeah, so good. I already love so many things you've said in there. So part of the session that we run with our year 10s is what is real world and what is porn world. And
Yeah.
we'll have things with them like everybody always orgasms. Nobody has pubic hair. Like everyone always wants anal sex, and we
Yeah.
break down these conversations of, what is perceived as like intimacy and like relationships.
And then the pressures that
And
bleeds onto these kids as well, like the pressure of, does that mean I
totally,
have to go and have anal sex with every partner? Does that mean I have to look this way? Do I have to have
totally.
certain size boobs or certain hair color? And it's how it's perceived through girls and boys as well is really interesting.
So I'd love to start off just actually defining what it is, because it's a really good place to start. Because nude photographs also come under this, which people don't often think of. And this is according to laws. So this is kind of breaking down things in terms of the law. So yeah, any explicit videos or photos of one or more people involved in it. Because the OnlyFans conversation comes into this as well. Even the sending and receiving of nude photographs come into this. And so, yeah, if we kind of just blow that up a little bit, that is what we're talking about in this. And even within like viewed pornography, obviously, like you just said, yes, there's like the paid actors, it is their job. But then, yeah, there's the amateur stuff. And there's like just one, I'm going to chuck this in as a really important first framework to be looking at through this lens. And again, not coming from a place of judgment, like we've both just said, we've interacted with it in the past. However, if we look at consent, and I'm going to ask you this question, Pippa. This is what I ask when I run these sessions. How do you know that the people that you are watching on your screen have consented to this video or photo?
You don't.
You don't know. Exactly. You don't actually know. You can never know if people have actually consented to you watching or engaging with this when it comes to strangers that you're witnessing on the internet. And it's a really important thing to consider, even when it comes to age. So if anyone in the pornography is under the age of 18, it is illegal. It comes under child pornography. How do you know that someone is over the age of 18?
You don't now. It's like you just
Don't know.
no.
Exactly. And these are the things that are really important. There are other, I'm not going to go into all the law stuff, but there are some other forms of pornography that are always completely illegal. When there's severe violence and all these things as well, there's other things. But this is just such a great place to start. When we're speaking about being in a society where we respect one another and we value one another, and whether that person is a stranger behind a screen or whether it's our best friend, when we start to interact with content in this way, a lot of the time, and people will be shocked how much of the time, that is not consensual, or there has been pressure involved in it.
Yeah.
Or there are things happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. And yes, there are some cases where there are contracts signed, and yes, some people are doing it through OnlyFans and stuff. Absolutely. We can sometimes gauge that there's been consent given. However, most of the time we don't know that. So that's the first thing, just to consider, like drop in as a thought when we are choosing to interact online. And then when it comes to, like nudes and stuff like that, again, just so that people are aware, there are laws in place to support us. Unfortunately, they didn't actually come in until 2015. That were
Wow.
digital harms and communication acts, that are around the sharing of nudes and cyberbullying and stuff like that. I'll put the resources in our show notes or something like that, because it is really helpful for us to know that there are places and agencies that can help if we've ever been in situations where our nudes have been leaked. We've had the conversation around sextortion. You've had people that
Oh,
have
I've
sent you
had
AI
emails
images, right?
demanding like $10,000 because they've put my face
Yeah,
on a body, and I'm like, that's not me. I'm like, just,
yeah.
it's insane.
So massively on the rise. Sextortion worldwide is, and within New Zealand, is
Yeah.
massively on the rise. And the reason that, like, this kind of feels a little bit doom and gloom, but these are really important conversations to have, because things like nudes leaked, things like videos leaked, they are leading to suicide. Like,
Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
leading to people taking their own lives. I'll see if you can guess this. Okay, here's a good fact for you. In New Zealand, there is a current law in place for if somebody shares nude photos or videos of someone without their consent. Take a guess what that fine is. It's a number. It's a fine.
$1,000,
More,
$5,000,
more,
10,000.
more.
Jesus, 50?
$50,000. Yeah.
Jeez.
So the current, yeah, and I'm so grateful that
Yeah,
that law is
geez.
in
I didn't
place and
think it'd
is
be that
that
high. I
much.
thought it'd be just something like $1,000, which isn't really like a
No.
lot, but 50K is a lot.
$50,000. And that's really important for people to know.
Mm.
And the reason that they've put that fine number on it, thankfully, is because of the potential harm that has and can occur when
Mm.
people's footage is being shared, like socially, emotionally, spiritually, like mentally, psychologically, the harm that can occur. And these are things I know of, cases around the Bay of Plenty where I live, where things like this have happened and people have faced these fines. And so knowing that there are things in place that can help us if we are
Yeah.
in these situations is really good to know about.
Mm.
And also, if you're that like mate and someone like sends someone a photo and then they go to like share it with you, or you got to share it with other people, you potentially could be facing a $50,000 fine right there.
Yeah.
So it's just like taking some moments when we are interacting with this content. There seems to be this misconception that if we're interacting with things on the internet, it's not as bad. If we say like a horrible thing on the internet, it's not as bad. That all the stuff I went through with maths, and I know a lot of you know me now, so all the Married at First Sight stuff, like, and the amount of harassment and stuff that I got, it's like, it's not okay. And I know that those people wouldn't say things to my face. I know that people wouldn't say things to Michael's face, that they were okay
Yeah.
saying things all over
Yeah.
the internet. There seems to be like this barrier where people can go, well, I'll just watch that, or I'll just interact with that and like come off scot-free. It's like, no, we really do need to be putting this level of consciousness in when we are engaging in these things. So yeah, kind of like a really nice place to start the conversation of like what it is and what currently kind of is in place and is happening at the moment. So I'll share this bit first because I feel like we'll do the kind of teenage stuff because I can really give some good pieces into that. And then maybe if we can talk about like why, like what we like from it,
Yeah.
and what are the reasons we're going in, which is great. Like, there's nothing wrong with the reasons we interact. For our young people, the main reason that they are interacting with it is for a means of education, because they're curious. Like, of course they
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
we all have been. And so it's not a bad thing. The issue is that apart from me and my colleagues who go in and do educate on this kind of thing, there are hardly any other means of education. And so my big call out right now is to parents of teens or preteens, or even older, to come into this conversation with us and get some pieces of information and work on diluting whatever charge might be here for you, whatever shame, whatever trauma, whatever hesitancy or discomfort is sitting here with you. Like, I welcome all of that. However, if we don't work on shifting that, we are leaving our young people with the only means of education being the internet. And that is not what we want for them.
No.
We
Two
don't
things
want
I
that.
wanted to ask you off what you said earlier was uh the first one is, what would pornography look like if consent was at the beginning of every video or whatever? Like, what would that look like? Like you said, you don't know with any video that you're watching online whether the man or the woman is consented. So, like,
Mhm.
what would it look like if it became like a law to say, if any videos are being posted online, it has to be a consent thing at the beginning or whatever? How that would change, like pornography. And the other thing
Mhm.
is, with me having a teenage stepson and then, a 9-year-old, I know they go through the journey. It's called the journey at school, and we don't kind of know the full ins and outs of what they're actually learning in that. And I'm quite curious to see what is actually being taught with, sexual education in schools, and do they cover
Yeah.
pornography? Yeah, yeah,
Most of the time, no.
okay.
Um, and like I'm saying, we're even going in as external agencies, and some of the schools still opt out of educating on it.
I'm like, why? Like
Um,
the thing is, it's a natural curiosity, especially for like young boys when like all the boys are in school. Oh, check this website and it's just like, why are they not go? Why? I mean, obviously, it's a parent responsibility as well, like with us talking to them and understanding, like, but we all have different experiences with it. So,
mhm,
how can schools integrate that for kids as a generic, that's where you come in, which is the great work you're doing. So,
mhm. And I think again, like, this is where it is really important for us to take that responsibility. So again, piece of research is that what our studies show is that young people want to talk to a trusted adult about these things,
yeah,
what they want to, but often it is actually the hesitancy, or the discomfort of the adults
or the
around them
shame and
that
things
stops
like
them
that.
from
Yeah,
doing
like,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay, so like perfect, what you've just segued into is okay, I'll see if you can guess these percentages. So boys aged between 14 and 17, what do you think the percentages of those who've been exposed to pornography?
80.
75%.
I was
Yeah,
about to say
nice.
75. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then girls, same age range, 14 to 17.
65?
58. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
it's
little
a bit
bit
lower.
less.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. This is New Zealand, based on New Zealand research as well. And so most of the time that hasn't actually been them looking for it. It's been like the live streaming movie sites where it pops up. It's been people showing them. A lot of the time it's actually like accidental, or they've come across it and they haven't really known what they've come across. And so what that tells us is that there's curiosity and there's like a wanting to know and educate,
Yeah.
but that they think that's the only way they can do it. And so it's really important for us to be just even having the openness, like diluting the charge in our body or the resistance to it if they come to us.
What's
It doesn't have to be
interesting is
going into the whole thing.
what I find really interesting is with my teenage boy, he what is it around this topic that instantly causes embarrassment and shame? Because what we're finding is he's looking at stuff on the laptop and he's clearing the history. Okay, great. He doesn't want me and dad to see what he's looking at. But why do they instantly like go delete the history? Because like there's just this element of like I shouldn't be looking at this, but there's this natural curiosity, as you move into sexual maturity, that how do we get this topic where kids feel safe exploring it, and exploring it with parents, like, hey, mom, dad, whatever, caregivers, I've got a curiosity, which I know it's kind of a kid thing as well. Like, it's not exactly we can go up to our parents and say, hey, I'm looking at this sexual site, blah, blah, blah. But, I just think it's fascinating how it just becomes this natural occurrence that I need to, delete my history, because I don't want my mum and dad to see it, even though we're not stupid. We know that he's going to go through certain, and girls too, it's natural. I started exploring 13, 14, and it's just even younger, and I think like, how do we manage this to be like it's an okay thing and it's a normal thing, but again, having these things in place to protect them.
So you've just pinpointed exactly the issue, is that society has shamed sex.
Yeah.
And it's relatively recent. Like, it was not that sex was a shameful thing not that long ago. As in, like, a couple of 100 years ago, it was not this shameful taboo thing. Very intentionally, we've spoken about this in multiple episodes, there is a shame, suppression, energy, emotions shut down around sex in itself. And so what we have done as a society is we have failed ourselves and our next generation by putting shame on things. And same thing with mental health. So then they're not talking to people. Same thing on suicide. Like, all of these things that are major, major issues. Even when we look at like sexual harm, particularly the amount of males that don't go and get help or don't go and press charges around it because they're so shamed about it. Because shame is such a strong
Yeah.
emotion. It means people aren't getting the help they need. And so how do we fix that? Is that, first of all, we have to dilute the shame within ourselves, and we have to start having the conversations, whether it's like having them with our friends, starting to connect more to our own sexual self and our sexual expression, go and seek help in therapists or whatever if you need to, if you have trauma that's sitting there that needs to be moved through. Like, it isn't actually natural that anyone would like want to hide and feel shame around it. It is the byproduct of society, and
Yeah.
it's actually super, super fucking harmful.
Mm.
And it's not like one person's fault. It's just been this constant, and whether it's even just those subtle things, like a sex scene starts to come up and then the adult starts to get uncomfortable because like the 10-year-old is sitting there. Like, it's just like really subtle things that
Yeah.
accumulate.
Yeah.
And then they make someone think, and not even just young people, they make anyone think. Like, take, for example, like you said perfectly, I've had the same thing with clients, is like porn addiction. And it does seem to be with this people I've spoken to, particularly with males and the partnerships. And there's this like massive shame around it. And so then what happens is the addiction, which is essentially offering some kind of stimulus, regulation, whether it's down, whether that's up, it's actually helping someone to feel really good. Now
Well,
I'm feeling shame about it.
it's under internal family systems as a firefighter, like reactive part of us. So when
Yeah,
the managers, the proactive aren't working, the firefighters come in, and that can be like sex addiction, things like that. So when you start to
totally.
see
Any
it from
kind of
a,
addiction.
yeah, so it
Yeah.
just,
We're just trying to make ourselves feel good. Of course we are. We're hardwired to try and make ourselves feel good when we don't feel good.
yeah.
But
And the thing,
particularly when it comes to porn, there's so much shame on it
well,
that
think about
then
how
like
was
we're not
porn
seeking help.
500 years ago plus. Porn was basically going into a brothel, watching people have sex.
Yeah,
We didn't have internet, so people would get off in different ways. Sex has always been a huge part of humanity. It's always been a
yeah,
huge. We've been given these beautiful bloody things on our body to have pleasure with, and through society, through shame, through all this crap, societal stuff, like it's just this piled on, hasn't it? And then obviously now porn's online, which has become this unrealistic, because when you're watching it in a brothel, I always go back to the Romans because they were horny bastards. They would have like brothels and sex parties and orgies, and they would watch each other, and that is real, not like real life, because you're there in the body language, in the actual, and a lot of it is consented. We don't know about the history and stuff, but how it shifted to online behind a camera, and then the health and safety with cameras and stuff like that. It's just this whole ordeal around it. So this could be a two-parter, I think, because
mm,
there's just so much to get through, and
mm,
I want listeners to really go away with some really good tools to, with future kids, with teenagers, if you've got 20-year-old kid, whatever it is, like there's something you're going to help your kids with. And even like looking at ourselves too, like what's our thoughts on porn? Or do we have issues around porn? Because it will show off to our kids.
Yeah. And I think it's like such a great conversation you just brought in is that what we're seeing now that is bringing in major potential for harm is that difference that has happened, is that now what is available is extreme violence within sex. There was a case here in the Bay of Plenty of a young man who actually ended up serving time in juvie because he duplicated what he saw in porn, which was strangulation, and
Oh, I
then
heard about that
strangled his
one. Yeah.
partner. Yeah. And she's okay. Well, she's not okay, like psychologically. She didn't
Yeah,
have
but
any
she's,
major
yeah.
physical injuries. However, it was just literally because he didn't know, and he's watching it, and also the chemical release, the dopamine release that's
Yeah.
happening when
Yeah.
somebody starts off regular use.
Yeah.
They then need to get more and more and more and more high, more high, more high, because it is that addiction. So the body gets the same response. And so they're looking for more of the fetishes, more of the hit. And I watched a great reel on this the other day. And it was so pornography has become like an attention seeking
Yeah.
revenue product, right? And so it's like,
Mm.
how can I grab someone's attention because there's so much available now in the market of it?
It's
So making it
overwhelming.
more extreme,
Yeah.
more extreme, more extreme, more extreme. So then people are going for it. And that's something that we've never had before. Like what
Mm.
we're seeing now is not things that you and I, even at our age, would have had available to us at that point. And the harm from that, like the psychological harm and then the physical part of it. And this is the bit that I speak to young people about and is really important for us to know. Okay, so let's play a guessing game. So when we look at erectile dysfunction, and there's been a massive increase in it, and there's lots of studies currently into it because what we're seeing now is pretty much
Yeah.
unprecedented when it comes to not only males and females, but I can give you a good set on this, and the issues that we're having physically when it comes to intimacy. So what do you think now is the average age of a male seeking medical attention because of erectile dysfunction?
30?
17.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
17
So,
years
so,
old.
so ultimately so how I see it like physically is like, so they're masturbating so much to
Yeah.
pornography when it comes to the real vagina, all that crap,
Their body's been programmed for
yeah.
it. And so it
Makes a lot
doesn't
of
then
you know what makes a lot
yeah.
of sense with that, which I'll just a personal story, Chris won't mind me sharing this. When we were separated for 18 months, all we did was masturbate because we didn't have any physical connection. And coming back together physically, it was like it was difficult because it was like he wasn't used to being inside a vagina. So it was like
Program. Yeah.
we had to really talk about it because if I hadn't done any, really deep inner work, I would have been like, oh, is this me? Has he lost
Yeah.
interest in me? Am I not sexy? But it's
Mm.
so true. And for it to be 17 is really sad. It's really sad because
Yeah.
that's
So
like,
one in four 17-year-old males in New Zealand is regularly watching pornography. One in four.
yeah.
Like think
Oh,
about just like me standing in a year 10 classroom. Oh no, that would be like a year 12, year 13 classroom. One in four, a quarter of them. And that's when we start to look at the addiction side of it. And absolutely. So the programming occurs. And it's the same thing for women. There's lots of studies now on women. And if you're
yeah.
only going through one series of like playthings, whatever it is, when you're in your own self-pleasure, the body does start to be wired in that way.
Yeah.
But the thing with pornography is the visual stimulus and the auditory stimulus. It's also happening at the same time,
Yeah.
adds into that experience. You get the dopamine hit, you get the testosterone, whatever is happening. And again, because the difference between males and female bodies is that for males, when they climax, it's a dopamine release, as opposed to women, it's an estrogen. Oh, sorry,
Oxytocin.
oxytocin, thank you. Oxytocin release. So one is that
Yeah.
high that you're
Yeah.
always trying to seek, and the other is like more connection. Oxytocin is more connection. And so that's part of what's adding into, like, seriously, what we're seeing is like major medical issues that we've never come across before. And one of the hugest contributors is pornography.
My mind is
And
going to ask you this question. What does the future look like for porn? Because what I've noticed is we didn't have this a lot when I was teenager, but a lot of the porn now is going into anime, which isn't even real people, it's like AI. And that's scary because I'm like, that's becoming even more unrealistic to kids and teenagers. And it's
Mhm.
like, what's that then causing in relationships with real
Mhm.
connections, real human connection and hormones and things like that? So what if you could put a realistic kind of it's just so hard to even think, conceptualize what does the future look like for porn?
Even more uncomfortable than anime is AI of like humans that look like humans and that you can't differentiate between if they're humans or not humans.
Yeah.
And this is when we start to look at, like sextortion, and people that think that they're talking to someone online when it's not at all who they're talking to, because you've got like, videos that you can have altered, you've got filters where you can make yourself look younger or older. And honestly, this is like a call out to all of us as a society. Like we have to do different to break down these barriers of this shame that sits around, essentially
Yeah.
it's the shame that sits around sex.
Yeah.
The shame that sits around sex, because if we didn't have that shame and we all work to dilute that, then it could be open conversations. It could be relationships where someone comes to someone else and is like, I fucking love you and I'm really struggling with this thing right now and I don't know how to get out, and I want to be close
Yeah.
to you and intimate, but I have this porn addiction, and
Yeah.
and these are the things I'm receiving from it. And then we have an open conversation, we have the skills to
Yes.
navigate through that, and then we replace the regulation with healthier regulation tools,
Yeah.
and then we don't need the addiction anymore. And also it's going at the way that we are so invested in the online and social interactions online. Like, I think we should just fucking get rid of so many social media outlets and meet people in person, spend more
Mhm.
time in person, like date in person. Like, yes, there's a great, like there is research, like in adolescent psychology, that there are benefits to social media in some ways.
Yeah.
However, like the risks that are involved when we just let it happen free reign and don't put in the barriers and the support, not only for our young people, but for ourselves. Like us taking accountability of being like, how am I interacting with the online world, and with all these things that are happening out here? And am I doing it consciously, or
Yeah.
am I doing it unconsciously? Am I feeding into the stereotypical view of what a male or a female should look like? Even if we broke it down to what you could tangibly do today to help this, it would be looking at your own relationship to your body, because pornography has major
Yeah. No.
can have major potential harm in terms of our own body image and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, it's going like, how can I feed into my own body image? Who am I following online? Are they also advocating for like real faces, real bodies, real
Mhm.
relationships, real health? Or have I been under the veil of this like highlight reel of life that we're all feeding into? That, because essentially, like, pornography is the highlight reel of sex.
Yeah.
Whereas it's just like the
And what if
just the
like
things that we want to show, just the bodies we want to show. And
we our last episode was about tantra, and how many couples struggle to connect in that way as well. So porn's becoming this like issue with, we're using porn to kind of, get off, like you said, and to find, but then it's having the real conversations about like it's okay to get turned on by whatever, whatever. But what about the real
totally.
connection? It's like it just there's just that disconnect, isn't there? And I think then obviously then it plays out in, a lot of relationships where they're like, the woman gets really, effed off because, hubby loves watching porn and having a play session, but then I'm like, well, okay, well, do you play? Do you have play sessions? Do you masturbate? No. So it's
Totally.
kind of like, there's just this barrier between have some real fucking conversations together. Like it's hard. It's not easy. Like it's not easy to sit there and say, "Hey, I've got this issue I'm working on, and it's shit." And I find it hard, and I, it's just because that shame is there, and we talk about this all the time. Shame dies in places where, what is it? The safe places. Shame. What is it? Shame dies
Shame dies
in.
when stories are told in safe places.
Yes, thank you. And it does. It's so true. It does. And I think this is why all these little pieces that we talk about each week on the podcast, we think about the greater purpose why we're talking about this stuff. Because it's all different elements to different relationships. We know relationships are different, and we know like kids are now moving into a different era for when we were kids. We're the
Mhm.
same age, so we grew up like I was a teenager in the 2000s, so it was like early 2000s, so it just how it's changed, and it is scary, but it's just how are we managing it as adults as well for our future
Mm.
children. Like, I've got a boy on the way and he's going to obviously go through this stuff in the next, 15 years. And it's like, how am I going to manage it? And I'm equipped. I feel great. I feel really greatly equipped to have conversations that my mum and dad didn't have with me. And Chris is going through that now with our teenage boy, having he wants to take kind of role of that, which is fine. Totally love him for that. But I think like I'm the type that would have a conversation with my baby boy and be, this is normal, go for it, but it's just making him aware of the, like you said, the implications and what's it going to look like in 15 years time. We just don't
Absolutely.
know. So I think the stuff you're doing is fundamentally so important. Schools need to get on board with this because if it's being taught in schools, it's kind of like it's not from parents because obviously kids can be like, oh, it's embarrassing, don't but with like, with your teachers, it can be a little bit different. It comes across different. But
Yeah.
I'm just with couples and how it bleeds into relationships too as adults as well. Porn could be really, detrimental to relationships as well.
Oh, it breaks up marriages, you know. I'll give three like really helpful things right now, just to kind of drop in some hope. There's one really easy thing that parents can do, is net safe. So get on board with net safe. You can actually put like digital boundaries in place around your whole Wi-Fi connection.
Okay.
Like, so certain sites just can't be accessed and everything like that. So it means that like everyone that has a device that's connected to the Wi-Fi, they just literally can't access certain things. Really easy thing, super easy, super tool, super great tool. And NetSafe is great anyway. If you can like ring them up and ask about internet things, they're great. And there's another fantastic website which I would go and take a look at, which is actually designed for young people from young people in New Zealand. It's called Icon, ICON, icon.org, I think, or you'll find it. And it has things like, stories of like, when I was like slut shamed for sharing a photo that was leaked, like I'm having issues with pornography addiction, cyberbullying, like all the stuff to do with the internet and how to stay safe. It's on that website. It's fantastic. And then when it comes to say like adult relationships, I would say begin to investigate your own sexuality. Like, to be completely honest, I love voyeurism, and I love exhibitionism. Like, me as a person, I'm really into like having people watch me and watching people engaging in sexual activity. I just really enjoy it. It turns me on. And I wouldn't have openly been able to say that a few years ago, but I've like diluted the shame in myself to be like, I know myself as a being, and this is what I enjoy. And it could be simply that you as a human like get off on voyeurism, which is watching things. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with all the like quirky,
Yeah,
delicious
yeah.
expressions of who you are as an individual. However, if that part of you is being misunderstood and then is leading to harm within yourself and your relationship, that's the part that we need to
Yeah.
look at and have some support on, whether that's like external support, whether it's feeling like you can facilitate that conversation with your loved one or with yourself or whatever it is. That's like a really important part of it. And then it's also going, so like, how can I, or what other ways can I begin to fulfill these needs that I'm getting from it,
Yeah.
right? And so looking at your nervous system health, looking at your self-care things, any form of like addiction or doing something that is leaving you with that like down afterwards, because often that is what happens,
Mhm.
like bring in more things that help you to feel good so that then you don't need that as much. Same thing with anything, that's giving us that down or up regulation that isn't serving us. Instead of going like, oh, there must be something wrong with me, which is what
Yeah.
so many people think when they're watching it. And like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing, we're all curious and we all express in different ways, and we're all interested in different things. However, we go back to that consent conversation. You never know if what you're watching is actually consensual. But also you can get those experience potentially in other ways. It's a great chance to have a conversation with your partner. You never know what could come from it. It could end up being like, oh, like I'm a little bit like that too,
Yeah.
or it might not
Yeah.
be, but at least you are your authentic self.
Yeah.
Because as long as you're hiding something that you are or you're doing, you're not showing up truthfully in a
You want
relationship
to
or to
be in
yourself
you want to be in
anyway.
a partnership relationship where you can both be our authentic self, working towards
Totally.
authenticity throughout everything. And I think it's having uncomfortable conversations to get there. Like, hey, just an example, hey, I get off on watching amateur porn. I might have times where I just want to go play with myself, and having those conversations, that's a boundary for me. That's my space. Not that I don't want you to touch me, because I absolutely adore that and I love it, but just having those awareness and actually open conversations to be like, I need time, to have time with my body. Or, and
Yeah.
my thing is, right now, my body's so different. Sex to me now is very different to how it was before I was pregnant. And so having to navigate the conversations with my husband around what feels comfortable, what doesn't feel comfortable, more engaged in my body and things, like me doing things my own self, connecting with baby and stuff, like, so and it's beautiful to have those conversations, because then I feel seen and I feel heard and I feel valued. And I think that's kind of like it, and I just feel safe. I feel safe. And that's all we
Mm,
ever want to feel, is safe. And I think that's
yeah.
kind of like what we want to kind of get across, is that we may do a part two for this, because there's probably a lot more that we can talk about with porn, because it's not a quick, easy topic to talk about. There's a lot to it, and how, how it can be so detrimental, but how it can actually be really helpful in relationships for connection. And like you said, the different fetishes and things turn you on, so that
Mm.
there's always like light and dark for everything, the duality, but we want to give you the tools to help with both. So maybe we do a revisit, maybe just to kind of like see
Mhm.
what else comes up in the conversation.
I have one final like sexy tip that I give to
Sexy
couples.
tip.
A sexy tip. More than just the tip. And that is, if you are both visual and you do like watching things, record yourselves.
Yeah.
It's something I've done in the past, and then watched it together. And
Mm,
it's been hot.
that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
Like super, super sexy. And at first, is it like at first there are parts where you're like, wow, like that
I look
is not
good.
a great angle. And then you just work the better angles. Yeah, like it's a really exciting thing, or even like Polaroid photos, or just,
Yeah.
like things that you can do that it help to heighten your experience.
It's just
But, even
exploring.
things that, like, yeah,
Yeah.
or totally, or like taking photos of yourself and just things like that. Then, and I will always say within that, be careful in it. If you've been dating someone for like a month and now they have naked video footage of you on their
Yeah.
phone, please be careful about that.
Mm,
We use that analogy of as soon as you put anything like up on the internet or send it or whatever, it's like the helium balloon that now you've let go of outside.
yeah.
So just be safe in it. However, like there are alternatives to the things that you're trying to seek that you can bring into your relationship that are really sexy and fun.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I like that one.
Me too.
That's great. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do a part two, because there's some things that I think I actually want to get. Wow, maybe we can get the men on to talk about this one, to see what the that'll be really good. Actually, maybe we get Chris and Michael on to do one from our like
I
partner's
don't know if I could
perspective.
last that episode. I would be like, I just need to take a little break.
Yeah, they'd be like, we sat there and they'd be like so horny after the conversation.
I
I'm
know,
just
but
thinking
if
like
I do it
from
at
a
a
man's
time when actually I
perspective.
get to see him,
Yeah.
I could do it online.
Yeah, maybe do something that we could just like, get in a man's perspective, and just like how different that could, and what advice they would give. That'd be actually really
Yeah,
cool.
well, on this, if you do have a partner or you'd like to hear the man's perspective, Michael and Ryan on their podcast,
Yeah.
Journey with Michael and Ryan, Michael's my partner, they have a great conversation around pornography. They go into a lot of the similar things to we do, a lot of the potential harm and everything like that too. I can see if I can find the episode and flick it through.
Yeah.
Yeah, Okay, cool. Thanks, team. Like, thank you for being in this conversation. And like, Pippa was saying at the beginning, like, thank you for just staying with anything that might have come up for it. We're completely giving you that support through that. However, like I've spoken into really passionately, is we do really need to be having these conversations for ourselves, for our own quality of our sexual wellness, for our relationships, for
And our
raising,
future
young people.
generation. Yeah.
We've got to keep breaking down the stupid fucking walls around these things because it's not doing us any good.
And that's what people love about this podcast is I have friends say, I just love you talk about all these taboo topics. They're not taboo to
Oh
me.
yeah,
They're just topics that we need to talk about because
totally.
yeah,
I teach it.
yeah. So it's just, just if you got any questions or anything's come up and you think, oh yeah, if you're struggling with the porn in your relationship, just reach out, shall we now?
Reach out to us.
Always,
Yeah.
we're always here.
And particularly if you are a couple looking for support, like it is my speciality, working with
Yes.
couples within this area, and particularly when it comes to sexual stuff. So do reach out as well.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Love you lots.
I love you.
Take care, guys.